I'm Robbie. I am the co-founder of Immutable, which is a Sydney-based technology startup that focuses on making digital worlds real. Now, what does that mean? Well, we're focused currently on NFT technology. We were one of the first pioneers in the NFT space way back in January of 2018, not that long ago, but in the NFT world, we're basically centuries old. And what we do is we make the infrastructure for any business to be able to create or trade their own NFTs as infrastructure and have that integrated in every marketplace around the world as well. Most importantly, we do this on Ethereum, the largest and most popular blockchain, but we allow everyone who uses it to do so in a completely scalable and carbon neutral manner. And the way we're able to achieve that is by radically reducing the computational power necessary to store these activities on the blockchain, and then offsetting the actual usage we do use with our friend and partner here, Trace. So we're really excited to be talking about why carbon neutrality is so important to our mission, but also why digital worlds are such an important thing to be moving forward as we sort of, enter this new world of gaming and working from home.
Great intro. Thank you so much, Robbie, and thank you for your time this evening. Just by way of introduction myself, I'm Kat, the co-founder and CEO of Trace. We're a software company that helps businesses achieve carbon neutrality. So I'm absolutely thrilled to have Robbie here today talking about his amazing business and the awesome action they're taking to protect the environment. So we'll drill into what that really means in a little bit, but let's just get started with a few intro questions, Robbie. I'd love to know, outside of work, what some of your sustainability practices are in your personal life, if any.
Yeah, I would say, obviously, I recycle. That's not really a window. I have solar panels, which I am actually currently installing. So that's been a new initiative, and the goal is to kind of completely personally offset my personal electricity use. Yeah, that's probably the biggest ones I do personally.
I mean, you've ticked off the big ones there, Robbie, so that's impressive. And yeah. Why is that so important to you? Why does sustainability matter to you personally?
Personally, I guess, obviously, as a young person, we're going to inherit the earth. I guess from a tech perspective, I'm really passionate about solar and battery technology, because I think that, there's a couple sides to solving the climate crisis. I'm focused on the side that I might be able to help, which is, I think, increasing supply or solution spaces, not just kind of conserving our energy usage. And I think there's energy should be infinite, and it should also not impact the climate. And so I'm actually kind of passionate about it from how do we help people both lift out of energy poverty and also stop destroying the earth? The answer is probably solar and batteries. Yeah, so I find that very exciting. I think we're reaching a cost gravity of solar where it just makes a ton of sense to start rolling it out very intensively.
Yeah, absolutely. Tech is definitely the way forward. But as we'll come on to later, in some senses, technology sometimes gets a bad reputation for a lot of the energy consumption that it uses. So let's bounce onto that in a little bit. But just to understand a little bit more, and you gave a great introduction at the start. Tell us a bit more about Immutable, how it came about, and what your mission is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I founded it nearly 4 years ago now with my brother, and we basically had been building startups for ages. So we built a betting application where you could bet on your own League of Legends match, sort of a self-wagering. We built a Shopify competitor, which automatically A/B optimized your store based on pricing and copy. And from that, we learned, don't compete with Shopify. And so we were just sort of engineers. We love building things and seeing them fail in both of those instances. And we became obsessed with crypto in 2014, in particular with Ethereum in 2015, because I remember reading the white paper of Ethereum, which is the blockchain that we use. And the founder's vision, Vitalik Buterin, was you could have a world which had permissionless infrastructure. So infrastructure that no one owned, that allowed finances and coordination to be solved at a major scale. And in fact, there's even theories around how Ethereum can be used to solve, collective action problems effectively, which are massive coordination problems, which is exactly what we're facing with climate crises. And I think there's huge potential there for blockchain. As much as I'm sure the people listening to this are like, what the hell? Like, this is the biggest antithesis to the climate problem. And what I was so passionate about as we were building this was people are going to live in digital worlds. It's coming, any fight against that is pretty, futile. And what is important in those digital worlds is that they have digital property rights. They can own their stuff unequivocally with the same rights that you can do a physical object in the real world. And right now you can't, or up until 4 years ago, you couldn't. But with the advent of something called a non-fungible token, which basically means the ability to own any digitally unique thing, you now can. And it doesn't just mean the expensive art that's been sold. That's one small segment. What we're really powering and interested in is this infrastructure and ability to own any digital thing, whether it's an in-game item, whether it is a piece of art or a speculative asset, whether it is a unique financial instrument like a term deposit, even whether it's the clothing you're going to own in the metaverse in the future when kids grow up in online universes. So I think this is really important from a personal self-actualization standpoint, and also from a economic standpoint. We need this infrastructure. And to us, what's important is that we want this infrastructure to be decentralized. I don't want it to be owned by, a giant tech company. I want it to be owned by something that everything owns and that people can trust can never be taken away from them. And so our goal is really to make that come to life on the most open infrastructure possible, which right now is we're building on top of Ethereum. And of course, Ethereum has a carbon footprint. There's lots of different assessments of how big that is out there, how the competing costs work. But our theory is we don't want anything to get in the way. And candidly, this is our selfish mission. I don't want anything to get in the way of our ability to take this infrastructure mainstream and to allow people to realize the benefits of what we're trying to bring to the world. Certainly not an argument about its impact upon the climate. And so we took it to ourselves. Well, how do we make it not just easy for people to use this, but also completely guilt-free? Any single time they trade or build an application that hundreds of millions of gamers can now own their digital property through, that's completely carbon neutral if it's built on Immutable X.
Super cool. And I think that guilt-free aspect is a really interesting one, and one we're seeing, come up with lots of our customers is, how can we do what we can to reduce our CO2 emissions as a business, but ultimately there's likely to be a remaining footprint, and how can we therefore, neutralize that and therefore make it guilt-free. So talk to me about how the fact that you're using Ethereum actually goes toward, and the platform that you've built is actually reducing the footprint versus some other trading platforms out there.
Yeah, well, look, Ethereum runs on decentralization, and the way it runs is that currently there's hundreds of thousands of miners all around the world working to produce blocks. That takes a ton of energy. Now, obviously, that energy consumption is going to be reduced drastically as Ethereum moves over to proof of stake, whereby people are proving the consensus mechanism by staking their assets rather than by sort of mining and churning away GPUs at maths problems, which is what they're currently doing. But even then, it's still going to have a carbon impact. And so when you use Immutable X, we're actually scaling Ethereum's energy efficiency by like 99.999%. As in, when you perform a transaction, we're able to batch 600,000, where previously you could batch, 300, into the same amount of usage of the Ethereum network. So that's a radical saving of the same amount of activity being done with the same level of security on Ethereum. So think of it like an advanced compression algorithm that's still using a really expensive machine in terms of carbon impacts, but we're just using a much smaller amount to get a lot more done. And then that small amount we use, we completely offset.
And everything you just described inherently is complex, and I'm sure there's many people listening that think, oh god, that's gone over my head. But you have somehow managed to measure the carbon emissions of your platform and the blocks that are created on your platform. So talk me through how you went about doing that.
It's actually pretty simple. So we took the best and most conservative estimate, as in the worst estimate of how much does Ethereum use in terms of carbon impact. Then we looked at how much of Ethereum do we use when we upload our proofs. because we're able to compress so much information into it. And we said, okay, well, whatever percentage of that of the overall carbon impact is how much we need to offset in order to ensure that every single time someone does a trade or does a creation of an NFT on our platform, we are in the most conservative estimates, so the worst case estimate of what Ethereum has as a carbon impact, completely offsetting that impact.
Yeah, fantastic. And I read that you've actually committed to doing that, you know, for the foreseeable future as well. So as you grow, that's actually,
I think until 2025 or whatever.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, you know, as you grow, that's actually, that footprint is likely therefore to increase. So talk me through how you sort of built that into your business model and able to, I guess, afford the additional cost to offset those emissions.
Yeah, look, and Kat, look, we're not, the whole goal of what we're doing is to scale Ethereum. So, and we scale, technical word is polylogarithmically. Really what it means is we can do a huge amount of transactions at a very fixed cost. And we pay that fixed cost. And that means it's a fixed usage of Ethereum. So even as we get 100, 1,000 times bigger, 10,000 times bigger, our impact or usage of Ethereum is probably only going to 5x, 10x at maximum. So those costs scale as our revenue scale.
Yeah, brilliant. That's great to hear. Now, controversially, and you know, as somebody that believes deeply in the power of carbon offsets, you know, in the interim, until we do get to a truly net zero world, there are critics out there that believe, you know, it's a way to just alleviate guilt and not a way to actually drive action. What would you say to that, and why do you believe that offsetting is the way forward, you know, right now?
Well, first off, I'd say it's not mutually exclusive with any other action. So, and second, I'd say, brilliant. Let people pay to offset their guilt. Who cares? Like the greatest advances in sort of social improvements or social benefits have been when they're aligned with financial incentives. I think that's what we have to do to change the world. We can't rely on shaming people into doing it. We have to create genuine businesses around these things. And of course, you can create a social cost to things, make consumers feel better. But at the end of the day, you have to have a genuine business drive for making things. And this is why back to the cost of solar, like the reason solar is going to take over the world is it will be cheaper than using dead fossil, like, dead dinosaurs buried in the dirt.
Yes. Funny when you put it like that, a reminder of what fossil fuels, where they really come from. And indeed, I've read several papers that suggest that actually, as the cost of solar comes down, then, you know, those miners that are consuming so much energy are actually more likely to drive the transition. Do you believe that's the case?
Well, if you view electricity demand globally as a fixed thing, and then however much demand there is and in particular, the usage of electricity is very cost sensitive in crypto mining. That's their main cost basis. So as soon as that ticks over from being it's slightly more profitable to use X source of power to, oh, I can sustainably run a solar rig on myself and I'm suddenly profiting off that, then you have this incredible arbitrage opportunity where people can buy huge investments in solar infrastructure, huge investments in batteries, and make instant profit or arbitrage off mining. So it basically is a global way for you to convert energy into cash without having to require an energy transfer system. So yeah, it's going to be one of the major drivers, I think, of solar adoption.
Fantastic to hear. Well, we've covered a lot about, I think it's really clear your passion for why you're doing this and why being carbon neutral is a really important part of Immutable's proposition. I'd love to hear what the reaction has been from your customers and maybe start with talking us through who some of those core customers are and what they look like.
Yeah, obviously we went live with TikTok's first NFT auction today, which was huge. And it's a must-have for them. It's not even fantastic. It's this is crucial for them to do any strategy whatsoever. They have to be able to showcase that it's completely carbon neutral. It's a requirement for their audience to even begin to look at liking this stuff. And so that's how I position it to partners, is you can't really do anything else. We're not in a world where as a mainstream company, you can go to your consumers and you can do something that is so associated with a negative carbon impact. So that's actually how I describe the impact.
Yeah, brilliant. And it certainly comes through on your website, and you've done a lot of content around the importance of being carbon neutral. Have you had any surprising reactions, positive, negative, just odd, to the fact that you are the first carbon neutral platform in this way?
There's always skepticism. People want to know how it works, how you're calculating it. People, outrage is an amazing thing. People love righteous anger. They don't like to be like, oh, this thing's actually fine. And, if they're like latched onto NFTs are terrible for the world, they want to find an argument to make NFTs terrible for the world. So I always find them interesting. I think, you just have to make it clear how you're doing things, make it really obvious that it's genuine, make it auditable, and then trust that you're delivering enough value that those people don't matter. There's definitely been a lot of just broadly positive feedback from most of the mainstream companies. Few people who just don't care. A lot of
don't waste your time on them.
Yeah, and look, ultimately the crypto is already incredibly mission driven, right? Like everyone in crypto right now is mission driven around autonomous finance for the globe and redoing the way we do money. So, for a lot of them, they're already on this personal mission and quest. And so they either empathize with the goals of making the planet better, or they don't care, candidly, because they care so much about this mission. But in general, like that, they're both classes of people trying to improve the world and who believe very strongly in a mission about the world.
Yes. Yeah, and this slight tangent, but you kind of mentioned at the start the purpose of Ethereum and distributed ledgers, and then you also talked about its use kind of in finance. Now, carbon credits by definition are a financial product, right? You issue a credit from a project, and then they get traded around the world. I've seen a few companies pop up trying to move carbon credits onto Ethereum or other ledgers. What's your thinking there, and is that something you might even consider participating in?
Yeah, I mean, if someone wants to use our infrastructure for that, absolutely, we'd love to help them, and they can do so without the irony of using a carbon impact while they transfer these tokens around.
Love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's plenty of cool ideas. Ultimately, the interesting thing is when, like, I think there's plenty of interesting potential around DAOs, which is effectively what we're going to see companies taken over by over the next couple of decades, which are, autonomous collections of people working toward the collective value of the DAO or the underlying token, and they control some sort of governance mechanism. And the powerful thing here is you can coordinate actions overall. So like a good example is we're seeing coordinated action to fight regulation in the United States, fighting crypto, where we're seeing huge amounts of funding in terms of politics. And we've also seen coordination around, moving liquidity from one particular financial protocol to another. And so I don't see any reason why we can't have some altruistic or financially motivated group which is achieving some particular environmental goal.
Certainly, that's very exciting to hear, and something that we at Trace are kind of looking to the future and thinking how we can play a role. So maybe we can pick your brains again about that another time.
I mean, even with NFTs, right? You could have, like, you receive an NFT if you have carbon offset X amount, or if you've donated X amount to a particular cause, and then suddenly you have this social status you can be assigning to your internet profile, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea. And, it's all about transparency, as you said, and that, clues in the name. We're called Trace because we believe people should be able to trace the impact they're having and have that transparency. So I think there's a huge opportunity for us to potentially leverage NFTs and definitely Immutable's platform to get there. Cool. Well, I'd love to kind of get your sort of last thoughts to close off today. I've learned so much and my mind is whirring. You've got a climate positive platform. What's next? What are your broader goals, and how are you going to get there?
Yeah, our broader goals are to be the global backend for digital assets. So we want to help, realize this digital future. We want to do it on Ethereum, the open internet, rather than a closed ecosystem. And we want to make sure it's done with, the best interest of anyone building on it, including environmental impact. We have a long way to go. We're scaling the team from 120 to 200 over the next 6 months. And yeah, that's kind of the current trajectory.
And I should have mentioned earlier, I believe you've just closed a large funding round, so huge congratulations. And that's presumably fueling a lot of that growth of your platform and your team. So that's wonderful news.
Yeah, that's been fun.
Amazing. Well, thanks for your time, Robbie. It's been brilliant to meet you and learn about Immutable.
Thanks, Kat.
Pleasure to have you on as a Trace Climate Positive product. And we look forward to working with you in the long term.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you guys for making it so easy.
Super. Thanks a lot.